Hello and welcome, Valueth here, and today we'll be talking about Preservation Evoker in Season 3. In this guide, we'll be discussing the significant 10.2 changes, our strengths and weaknesses, important talents, stat priority, Season 3 tier, legendary weapon and embellishments, as well as playstyle, rotation and core abilities. The release of Dragonflight brought us Preservation Evokers, which came with a completely new way to heal our allies in the game. I was immediately drawn to this new kit and playstyle and have mained a Preservation Evoker throughout the expansion, with more of a focus on raiding than M+. However, I have done my fair share of M+ on the guy and have a really good understanding how they work and feel in Season 3. But let's hop into what the changes are for 10.2. Here are all the final changes to Preservation Evokers in Season 3. Some of these are more important than others in my opinion, as they impact our gameplay in one way or another. As with all other healers, our single target healing spells got big buffs this season. Living Flame is now a very strong single target heal, but can also be a good multi-target heal if it was fully loaded by a maxed out Fire Breath to trigger our Leaping Flames talent. Verdant Embrace got juiced up too, but is less effective due to the nerf to Temporal Anomalies Echo application yet again. This is somewhat countered on the other hand by our new tier set, which makes our empowered spells have a chance to apply Echo on our targets. For our Blossom build enthusiasts, of which I am one myself in a raid environment, you'll be pleased to know that not much has changed in terms of how we play that build. The build got some nerfs to Cycle of Life and Fluttering Seedling changes, but overall our Blossom build is still very strong. Rewind got nerfed and now recovers 33% instead of 40%. This is still on par with other healers who also got their large CDs nerfed. Rewind is still an incredibly strong CD though in all content. Week 1 of 10.2 just finished up and I ran a lot of keys on my Preservation Evoker and even cleared some 20s. We are very strong in Mythic Plus, with significant utility as well as good throughput. We are a more complex healing class though than most in the game, and as such requires you as the pilot to know the damage profile of the dungeons a bit better than most other healers. This makes situations when you find yourself out of CD cycle very dangerous, and you will need to triage heal with Living Flame until they are back up again. However, if you plan it out well enough and make good decisions throughout the run, we are incredibly strong healing wise. And with the buffs mentioned earlier, we can now dish out some incredible DPS as well. So what strengths do we possess in order to navigate Season 3 of M+? Well, we have Lust or Heroism. This is a mandatory CD for all content in the game. We also possess fantastic mobility with our Hover spell, and not to mention Rescue to help our confused DPS companions not stand in bad. We have several ways to help CC and interrupt enemies. We have an interrupt, a knock up and knock back with Wing Buffet and Tail Swipe, but we also have Oppressive Roar and Overall to extend enemy CC as well as help soothe enraged enemies. We possess excellent personal defense abilities with 2 charges of Obsidian Scales and strong healing over time ability in Renewing Blaze. Both of these spells should be utilized frequently in your runs. Strong spot healing from Verdant Embrace and Living Flame. If planned out well, we can full heal an entire party within 1 global cooldown by using both of these abilities. Our empowered spells are incredibly strong and available often. With our new tier set, our empowered spells are even more important to use on CD as they help trigger more Living Flames and Echo applications. With the buffs to Living Flame as well as our new tier set, we can now also push out a great amount of damage to help out in keys. But unfortunately we can't just have strength now, can we? Here are some of our glaring weaknesses that we have to contend with. The first and most obvious and annoying one, we have reduced range for all of our abilities. This is by far the most annoying thing about the class and requires you as the pilot to always be aware of where your party members are in order for you to effectively heal them. Not to mention it can be annoying for your DPS to have to scoot closer to the boss or trash bag just to be within your range, which by itself increases the risk of damage taken by them. But this is where our mobility helps us out, as well as good pre-planned application of our Echo spell. If your party member has an Echo on them, they do not need to be within your range for your healing to affect them. This means that if they are outside of your healing range but still have an Echo on them, any healing you do that can be duplicated or picked up by your Echo will still apply. Like most healers, we are more effective when the group is stacked, which rarely happens in a fluid environment as M+, but is more frequent in raid. On top of our range limitation, this means we have to always be aware of our surroundings, much more so than our other healers. Overall, Preservation Evoker is a complicated healing class with a kit that is very fun, but not immediately obvious on how to play. It relies on many interactions of various talents and abilities in order for it to be effective. It takes a skilled pilot to do it right, which requires a great deal of practice. But in my opinion, it's well worth it. It is one of the most fun healers we have in the game. Now let's move on to our talent build. Not much has changed this season for us in terms of our talent build, considering our overall playstyle has not changed much at all. However, there are a few changes that the larger Preservation Evoker community seem to have agreed upon is the best build this season. The first change is in row 6, where we no longer pick up flow state. Also, the choice between Dreamwalker and Rush of Vitality still seem to be more of a personal preference than a requirement. I myself like to run Dreamwalker, as I like to be able to move while channeling Emerald Communion. Row 9 is the next and last change to the build this season, and that is to spec back into Grace Period. In Season 2, we did not make use of this talent as much, but it looks like it will make a comeback in Season 3. I think this is primarily because there are no real good alternatives to this talent. Reversion will still be utilized frequently in M+, so this pickup will help us with our overall ability to heal our party. I know there are folks out there trying to play with the Nostormus teaching talent instead of Resonating Sphere. I will be trying out this build once I have my full 4-piece tier set to see if this is viable at all. But in general, our talent build has not changed much in Season 3. Moving on to stat priorities. Unlike other healing classes, we do not really have any hard caps that we are looking for to min-max our build. In general, you will want to have between 25 and 30% crit, and closer to the 30% if possible. I find that once you go too far below 25% crit, our heal starts feeling a bit limp, and our reversions start falling off earlier than I would want them to. You should try to aim for roughly 25% haste as well to help with your empowered spellcast and living flames. You can go a bit higher or lower than this if you want, but 25% I found to be a really nice sweet spot for how I like to play the class. This is where some personal preference comes into play, but beware. If you dump haste too much, you will run into a lot of problems with being able to push out your heals fast enough. Once you have your crit and haste at around those levels, you will want to pick up as much versatility as you can. This is always a great stat to have, as it improves your damage and healing done, but also reduces your damage taken. Mastery is decent for us, but it comes down to how you as a player is able to utilize it. Crit, haste and versatility, in that order, is still more important for M+ content. You will have a good amount of mastery from the gear you get, and if you are between two pieces, just follow the stat priorities mentioned here. Let's talk about our new tier set, as it will have a rather large impact on our gameplay in Season 3. Our 2-piece set bonus says that our empowered spells cast up to 3 living flames at enemies or allies at 50% effectiveness. And our 4-piece set bonus makes our living flame have a 33% chance to apply a full strength echo on allies healed or a nearby ally who doesn't already have an echo on them. There are a lot of things going on here, so let's first talk about our 2-piece set bonus. This is by far the strongest of the two, as it provides us with direct increase to healing and damage. It also makes many of our talent choices substantially stronger, such as Enkindled and Life Force Mender. My immediate thought goes to how this set makes our already incredibly strong Stasis spell all of a sudden substantially more powerful. I will go into more details on how to perform our Stasis ramp combo in the rotation and abilities section, but for now, our 2-piece set bonus makes our Stasis include up to 6 living flames for free, and between 2 to 6 free echoes as well, depending on your RNG. Not to mention that in order to successfully heal any dungeon, we need to continuously use all of our empowered abilities for either healing or offense. This now triggers tons of free living flames and echoes via our 4-piece, which in turn now also triggers a ton more essence bursts for us. These can then be used for even more full strength echoes or free disintegrates for damage and mana management. Like I said, our 2-piece has a multitude of implications for how we choose to play the class moving forward. Our 4-piece is good, but nowhere near as impactful as the 2-piece. It is Blizzard's attempt to balance out the Resonating Sphere nerf, which now only makes Temporal Anomaly apply 3 weak echoes on the first 3 targets it hits. You remember those good days in Season 1 where we could cover an entire raid in echoes in 3 to 4 global cooldowns? But as expected, Blizzard thought that was too much fun and needed to remove it entirely. Anywho's, the 4-piece tries to move this nerf and make it part of our 4-piece set bonus instead. I do not like the RNG aspect of this one bit, as it creates situations where you don't get it when you need it, and you get it when you don't need it, which simply is just a waste. For those of you that were lucky enough to get the legendary weapon in Season 2, you might want to clear out some space in your bank for it. As of the release of this video, I have not seen any communication from Blizzard that would allow us to upgrade this weapon in Season 3. Currently, the weapon is 457 with a very strong proc ability, which makes it equivalent to somewhere between 470 and 480 eye level. However, I think most, if not all of us, with the weapon will find replacements for it relatively quickly. The 9-move staff is likely going to be our best in slot weapon until we hear anything from Blizzard regarding the legendary. Moving on to our embellishments. The top one we'll be running this tier is Adaptive Dracothist Arm Guards, same as last tier. We also want to be running Venom Steep Stompers. The Undulating Spore Cloak got nerfed to the ground and is not a viable option currently. If you're still running with it, you should probably try to find a replacement for it as soon as possible, so you can get the other 2 pieces made and equipped. My recommendation for crafted gear is to get the wrist done first, then the boots. So how does one play a Preservation Evoker? Let us first start with talking about the spell Echo before anything else. This spell is one of the most important ones for Preservation Evokers to understand what it does and how to properly use it. Echo is a spell that can be applied in 3 different ways in Season 3. The first one is manually. Second one, applied via Temporal Anomaly, or thirdly, via our 4P set bonus. Once the Echo is applied to our targets, it now allows us to set up our entire healing kit. If an ally with Echo is healed with an ability, that ability is duplicated at 70% effectiveness. If the Echo was applied with Temporal Anomaly, then it is only at 30% effectiveness. What everyone needs to understand here is that if you heal one player that has Echo applied to it, it will copy the same heal to everyone else that also has an Echo applied. For example, let's say your entire group has Echoes applied to them and then you hit Reversion on the tank. The following will occur. Every player that had Echoes on them will now have 1 stack of Reversion as well. But wait, our Echo ability also says that it will cast a healing spell an additional time, meaning you get to double up on any healing spell you cast. This means that in our example here, every single person in your group now has 2 stacks of Reversion, not just 1. So 1 global cooldown to hit Reversion on a tank resulted in 10 Reversions getting pushed out all in an instant. This interaction is why Preservation Evokers can push out a ridiculous amount of burst healing very fast. The same logic applies to all of our heals, which is why Echo is an incredibly powerful spell and is the most important one any Preservation Evoker player need to master as soon as possible. Generally, everyone in your group should have Echoes applied to them practically the entire run, so that you can quickly heal them when needed. If nothing else, an Echo should be kept up on your ranged DPS, as they will often be outside of your healing range, but the Echo spell ignores that. What this means is that if you have an Echo on a player that is outside of your healing range, that player will still receive the same benefits of an Echo within your healing range. Let's take a moment to talk about our various abilities and how they work, starting with our offensive spells. Living Flame is our basic direct healing and damage dealing spell. With talents like Life Force Mender, Ancient Flame, and Leaping Flames, we make this basic spell into a multi-target healing tool, as well as a fireball slinging projectile of pain. This spell should be used for spot healing or to deal damage. It was also made more important this season thanks to our 4P set bonus, as it now has a chance to trigger Echoes on allies when targeted with this spell. Disintegrate is a channeled damage dealing ability that uses essence as a cost. We will discuss our resources here in a little bit, but for now, all you need to know is that this is the spell you should use to dump any excess SS burst procs you have. It does single target damage as well as regenerate some mana thanks to the Energy Loop talent. Fire Breath is our most important damage dealing ability, as it has a direct impact on our healing as well. We should all be talented into Leaping Flames, which makes our Living Flame Strike an additional target for each empower level of our Fire Breath. Because of this, I tend to always max this out to gain as many Living Flames as I can, and for our new 4P set bonus, this becomes even more valuable to do as it does directly help us get Echoes out on more targets, while at the same time add a substantial amount of damage. Last but not least, when it comes to our damage spells, is Deep Breath. This is such a fun spell to use, and even more so if you're able to use it over a large group of enemies and see all of those beautiful damage numbers start flying. This spell is not just a great way to do damage, but it also serves as a mobility cooldown, and perhaps most useful of all is that it removes all root effects. If you run the Everbloom dungeon and you engage that large tree patrolling the walkway towards the first boss, you know he will eventually root you. Well, pop this spell and you'll be released immediately, as well as do a lot of damage to the roots for others. Only downside is, it has a very long CD. We also have Azure Strike, which you generally never cast in any dungeon environment. Now let's go over our healing abilities. We already discussed Living Flame above, but we also have another strong single target healing spell called Verdant Embrace. This spell has many important interactions with many of our combos that we will discuss shortly, and can be made into a very strong group heal with the help of Echo. It also makes your Dream Breath stronger via the Call of Ysera talent as well. Temporal Anomaly is also at the core of our healing kit, as it is one of our Echo delivery systems, It also has the added benefit of providing 5 players with a nice shield as well. Very important spell to use, but be careful. It takes a lot of mana, so be deliberate with its use and make sure you aim it right. Emerald Blossom is mostly used in raids, but does have its moments where it can be useful in M+. It puts in a large screen circle, which has a 1.5 second delay before it erupts and does a lot of AoE healing. This is great for raid, where stacking up a large group of players in one spot is relatively frequent, but is less common in M+, and especially in pugs. Hence, this is not really used much. Reversion is probably one of my favorite spells in our toolkit, especially when used effectively with Echo. Reversion heals the target for a moderate amount for 12 seconds, but each time it critically heals, it extends its duration by 1 second. This does duplicate when using a target with Echo on them, making this an incredibly powerful heal over time to use. This is something you will have up frequently during your runs, and especially on the tank. Reversion also buffs your healing to targets that have it thanks to the talent Grace Period. This is why I generally want to have Reversion running on my group at all times to make sure I get the benefit of this talent. This is also why crit is an important stat for us, as it allows our Reversion critical heals to extend its own duration, which means more uptime during the dungeon. Spirit Bloom is an empowered ability that does healing to more targets the more empowered it gets. If you fully empower this guy, it will fully heal your group. It is an incredibly powerful spell that should be used frequently and even more important now considering our tier set. Dream Breath is an empowered spell that has some decision making baked into it. There are 3 empowered levels to the spell, with level 1 applying a strong hot with a small immediate and direct healing, whereas level 3 provides a strong immediate and direct healing with a smaller hot. Level 2 is a balanced approach with a moderate hot and a moderate direct healing amount. This is where you as the pilot need to figure out what is needed at the time. If you know that there is pulsating damage that is about to happen, it may be a good idea to have a level 1 Dream Breath, as it will counter some of the incoming damage with the heal over time effect. Or, if you know a spike damage is about to happen, push that puppy all the way to level 3 and set up a stronger direct heal to top those health bars up. But we also come to the group with some really good utility for others and ourselves. We have Hover, which is a great personal mobility spell that allows us to launch ourselves forward and gain 30% movement speed. What some people don't know is that if you click the hover button while standing still, you will hover in place, which can be very useful, as while in hover, you can still cast spells while moving. A great time to do this is the boss Volcall in Atal Dasar when you reach his second phase. You will need to constantly move with the boss while a lot of damage is going out. If you do this little trick, you'll be able to heal and move at the same time without yeeting yourself to Narnia first. Tip the Scales makes our next empowered spell instant and reach max empowerment. Most of the time I use this with Spirit Plume for those whoa shit moments when the group takes a lot of damage I was not prepared for. We bring multiple ways to help control enemies with an interrupt, a knock up and a knockback with Wing Buffet and Tail Swap, but we also have Oppressive Roar with the overall talent to extend enemy CC and help soothe enraged enemies. We are also the only class in the game that can dispel all types of debuffs thanks to the Cauterizing Flame and Naturalized spells. Last but not least, we have Lust, which is in general a mandatory spell to bring to any dungeon group. Moving on to our resources. We operate with 2 different resources in order to execute our abilities, and those are Mana and Essence. Mana is self-explanatory, but what is Essence and how do I generate it and how do I spend it? Essence regenerates over time after it's been used. Not much we can do about that, but what we can do is fish for Essence Burst procs. Essence Burst is a talent that makes Living Flame have a 20% chance to allow you to use a spell that costs Essence completely free. And also thanks to the talent Essence Attunement, this can stack up twice. What this means is that we have to weave in Living Flame between everything we do in order to get these Essence Burst procs so we can get those free casts out. Preservation Evokers are mana hungry, and the more free casts we can get, the longer we and our team can stay in the fight. Now consider all of what I just said and then combine it with our new 2-piece tier set. All of those free Living Flames from our empowered spells will also have the same chance to trigger Essence Burst procs. This means we will have significantly more of these procs, and it is important that we utilize them effectively. Now let's talk a little bit about our various ramps as well as combos. A healing ramp you should know with Dream Breath is how it interacts with Verdant Embrace and the Call of Ysera talent. Immediately after you have used Verdant Embrace, it will trigger the Call of Ysera talent, which says that your next Dream Breath will be 40% stronger. Now consider this interaction and then layer on top of that our previous discussion about our friendly spell Echo. Let's set up a quick Dream Breath ramp here for a scenario where you know that there will be significant amount of pulsating damage coming out in roughly 5 seconds. You want to prep your team with a nice fat heal over time so you can utilize your other healing capabilities during this damage cycle without having to worry about everyone dropping like a rock too quickly. So let's do this. Number 1. Hit Verdant Embrace on yourself to make sure that you are at max HP, which will hopefully trigger your mastery. Unless there's an ally that actually needs a direct healing, use it on them. This will trigger the Call of Yzair talent, making your next Dream Breath 40% stronger. Our mastery says that so long as we are at a higher HP percentage than other, we will do more healing to them. Number 2. Apply echoes to your team either manually or via tempo anomaly. At this point, the damage will be coming out in about 2 seconds. Number 3. Hit Dream Breath, but only empower it to level 1. Just before the damage starts pulsating out, hit Obsidian Scales. This will help reduce your damage taken so you can maintain your HP percentage higher than the rest of your group. This should help you maintain your mastery as well. So what have you now created for yourself? Well, your entire team now has a super juiced Dream Breath heal over time on them, thanks to you proccing the Call of Yzair talent before you started this ramp. But also thanks to your foresight of applying echoes to everyone, they have double the amount of juiced up Dream Breath heal over times on them. On top of that, because you hit a personal defensive before the damage went out, you are more likely to have a higher HP percentage than the rest of your group. This will help maintain your mastery during this damage cycle, further increasing the strength of your heals. This may seem like a lot of stuff that needs to happen in order to simply put an empowered heal over time on your entire group. What is important to remember with Preservation Evokers is that our ramp and combos require us to know in what order things need to happen to maximize the potential output of our spells. If we know how to do that, then there are very few healers out there that can match our throughput potential. Another combo we should all know is how to properly set up and use Emerald Communion. Emerald Communion is a channeled spell that does a good amount of healing, but also provides us with a good amount of mana regeneration. There's a combo with this spell that can produce an immense amount of healing if done properly. So how do we start that one off? Well, you guessed it. It starts with echoes. The first thing we want to do is make sure our group has echoes applied to them. Once the damage has hit, immediately hit Verdant Embrace on yourself. It's important that you do this to yourself, and I'll explain that in a moment. Once you've done this, it will trigger the talent Lifebind. This is the core of why this combo works very well with Emerald Communion. It does 40% of the healing done on anyone affected by Lifebind to heal others with Lifebind. Because you had echoes on everyone before you hit Verdant Embrace, that means your entire group has this buff on them now and receiving any healing done. Immediately after hitting Verdant Embrace, cast Emerald Communion. Now if you read what this spell does, it says that any overhealing done to you as the evoker gets transferred to other allies. This is why you want to hit Verdant Embrace on yourself to fully top yourself up, which will cause all of the Emerald Communion healing to go to others. Well, everyone also has Lifebind active when this goes off, which just causes an absolute cascade of healing across the group that is just insane. As if that wasn't good enough, you'll also be getting a bunch of mana back. But let's finally get to how to properly use Stasis, and let's do that by going over an incredibly powerful spell combo to load it up with. But first, what does Stasis do? Think of it this way. The moment you click the spell, it will record the next 3 healing spells you do and store them for later use, and you decide when to release those 3 spells so long as it's within the 30-second stasis window. So let's go over a simple stasis ramp and when you may want to use it. Your stasis ramp starts with you preparing your group for healing, which yet again means making sure you have echoes out on your party. I'm thinking you may have noticed a trend here by now when it comes to echoes. Before you click your stasis button, make sure that all the spells we will load it with are available for use. Click your stasis spell, then do the following. Hit Verdant Embrace on either yourself or a party member that needs healing. You do this to make sure that you trigger the Call of Yzair talent to boost your Dream Breath. Number 2, use Dream Breath. I like to max it when I load it into Stasis, as I'm more likely going to need it for immediate and direct healing. Number 3, max a full Spirit Bloom to once again make sure you do as much healing as you can to your group. When casting either Dream Breath or Spirit Bloom, you should use Tip the Scales to make either of them maxed out and instant cast, which saves you some time. What you have now done is not only all the healing you did to load your stasis, but you also have 3 powerful spells ready to go in one button click for when you really need them. So on top of the 3 spells you've already loaded into your stasis, you're also likely going to get up to 6 living flame casts as well as the echoes to trigger off of our 4-piece set bonus. That is it for this Preservation Evoker Season 3 M+ guide. I hope you enjoyed watching the video as much as I enjoyed making it. I love making informative content like this for new players and veterans alike, and I have much more planned for Season 3. I hope you consider liking and subscribing to the channel to stay up to date. Thank you for watching.